Hello everyone, TMMgamer here, and today I'm bringing you episode 3 of my quick COD tip series. Now this episode is going to focus on Team Deathmatch. Just a little bit on the gameplay first. So I think I'm using the dual wield scorpions in this gameplay, and it's on Havana, and it's just a standard 6v6 TDM. Now my number one tip for TDM is always pay attention to your radar, because Team Deathmatch has the more random spawns of pretty much any game mode apart from free-for-all. If you play mainly objective game modes, I'm thinking games especially like Demolition, Domination, Sabotage, games like that, you know 95% of the time where the enemy are going to spawn. Because, for example, in Demolition the spawns are set. They'll always spawn in that one part of the map all of the time. And in Domination, they're going to spawn in and around any flags they have captured. So 90% of the time, you are going to know where the enemy is spawning. However, in Team Deathmatch, it is completely different to this. 90% of the time, you're not going to have any idea where they are spawning, because the spawns are almost completely random. You know, it takes in a whole variety of things. It spawns preferably away from the enemy, close to your teammates, far enough away from the action so you don't die straight away, but close enough so you can get into the action quickly. But in a game like Team Deathmatch, fulfilling all those criteria still leaves quite a large area for people to spawn in. So that really does put additional emphasis on paying attention to your minimap. Now, I don't just mean paying attention to your minimap when you have a UAV up. I mean paying attention to the minimap when you don't have a UAV up, because by looking at where your teammates are, you can pretty much guess, I think fairly accurately, where the enemy are going to be. If you just have a quick look at the minimap now, you can see my teammates are on the left hand side of the map and the enemy are on the right hand side of the map. So it's very, very rare in Team Deathmatch that you get both teams spawning close to each other. So if you just keep a good eye out for where your teammates are in relation to the rest of the map, you'll have quite a good idea where the enemy is spawning. And if you have an idea where the enemy is spawning, you can get into gunfights quicker. And if you can get into gunfights quicker, you can ensure wins, because Team Deathmatch is all about gunfights. You know, in objective game modes, it's all about getting that plant or getting that flag captured, and you could go negative and have a fantastic game and still help your team to win. But in TDM, it is all about getting into gunfights quickly. You know, especially if you're in a bad team, you don't really want to sit back and defend. You know, if you're in a party, you can play a little bit more defensively, because you know the rest of the people on your team are going to be competent enough not just to feed the enemy kills. However, if you aren't playing with a friendly team, it is extra specially important to get into those gunfights regularly, and that's why I strongly recommend a perk like Marathon in Team Deathmatch. Especially in a map like Havana as well, because Havana is quite a long and linear map. You know, you get some maps which are quite rounded, so if you just stick into the centre of the map and dominate the centre, you will be able to run into gunfights just as successfully. You know, the map I'm thinking of especially here is Array. If you look at Array, you have that major array building right in the centre of the map and the periphery, and if you just hang around the centre of the map, people will come to you. However, on a map like Havana, which this one is, it's a lot more difficult to do that. Even if you stay in one of the two buildings either side of the main road, the chances are you could not find gunfights for quite a prolonged period of time, because people will spawn in the extremities. So it really does help to do laps of the centre area of the map, and this is a tactic I use in this gameplay to pretty good effect. You know, I spend most of my time running around the central area of the map, trying to get into gunfights just that little bit more quickly than I would just by staying in one position. And that is my other main tip for Team Deathmatch. It's move around the map cleverly. You know, I don't just mean charge down the centre of the street, and you very, very rarely see me just completely bull rush down the central street in this gameplay. But what I do is I stick to the insides of the buildings. I go down the back alleys, you know, making sure that the enemy don't get clean shots at me, and making sure when I eventually get into a gunfight, it's on my terms, not theirs, which means that I'll win it more often than I lose. And that is pretty much Team Deathmatch in a nutshell. You've really got to pay attention to your minimap, because obviously the spawns are so much more random than they are in objective gameplays. If you just charge around like a headless chicken, you won't run into half as many gunfights if you just rush with a little bit more nous. And the second tip is make sure that whatever you do, do not sit in one part of the map for too long, especially on a linear map like Havana. You need to run around the map, be clever in your movement, I mean, that wasn't particularly clever in the movement. You saw what happened there. That was the first time in the gameplay that I just bull rushed straight down the middle of the map, and what happened? I got killed. So if you move sensibly, pay attention to your minimap, pay attention to where your teammates are. If you don't have a UAV up, you'll have a very, very successful time in Team Deathmatch. Anyway, the gameplay is slowly winding to a close now. It's a really fast-paced gameplay. I think the final score is 26-6, which isn't too bad, because I don't think I get a single kill with the kill streak. So it's a pretty good gameplay, and I thought it was a gameplay that illustrated just the right way to play Team Deathmatch, you know. It's not a fantastically massive score, I don't get 50 kills, but what it does show is just the core things you've got to follow if you want to do Team Deathmatch well. And if you do Team Deathmatch well, it is a game mode where you can carry a lot of poorer teammates, you know. It's very, very difficult for you to win a 6v6 domination on your own, but if you have a good game of TDM, you really can carry your teammates. Anyway, the video's over. I think that was 26-6, the final score. So if you've enjoyed the tips, please rate and comment as always. Leave a comment suggesting what area you want me to cover for the next quick COD tips video, because I'm just sticking to the game types at the moment. But if you want me to do anything specific, I'll be quite happy to do that. Anyway, like I said, guys, gameplay's over now. Please leave a comment if you enjoyed it, and as always, guys, have a fantastic day.